So I have plenty of evidence, the best evidence, which is a variety in different types of evidence. So it's not limited to just one type of evidence. But of course, the medical evidence is the best. So I have the medical evidence, and I also have the other good evidence that I have is the evidence from the MRI test's own electronic data recording. So it's kind of like a airplane data recorder. Okay, so the test started at 1:05 p.m. and so what it shows is they do 8 sets of images that don't use the contrasting agent, the dye. Okay, so it took on average 2.5 minutes to do each set, which is basically you reposition the patient inside the tube, and then in one instant you just multiple cameras work and you take like 18 to 25 images. Okay, so it shows that the first eight went through without a hitch, right? And it also shows now Mr. Papel, obviously nobody hired him because when the MRI technicians are in great demand, and nobody hired him until he got hooked up with this with the frauds at this facility here. So really he's worked for so many years as a phlebotomist. Yeah, so he's very good at injections. And in fact, after the 8th set, you get the first, then you get 9, 10, 11. And 9, 10, 11 are the post-contrast sequences. Okay, so he was very fast. Actually, he was taking 2.5 minutes for the sequences without the contrast, and then he only took about 2 minutes and 55 seconds for reaching the sequence with the contrast. So I'm not sure whether he had a catheter pre-positioned or whether he just had the injection done all together after the 8th sequence, but it went by very fast. It just took a few additional seconds, and he took care of sequence number 9. So really, if you take care of sequence number 9, that's the first post-contrast sequence. There should be no problem. You should take 2.5 more minutes and because you don't have to give any more contrast. Just like before, you take 2.5 minutes for each set, and that should be 5 more minutes. So, but instead of just finishing it off at 5 minutes and that would be the normal way to have it done, what he did is, what the evidence shows is, because what he told me, now after he had done the first post-contrast sequence, he told me that the injection did work out, that only half went in. And of course the evidence, my knowledge is coming over the course of 3 years, but once he did that first one, there should be no complications at all. The other 2 should have gone off without a hitch. And so he only used that as an excuse to do an additional injection. And what he told me is that a vein shut off. Now, it is true that for some people a vein may shut off, and then there's so many other veins you can try, and that goes by very quick. They can just find another vein and inject and be done with it. But in any event, my medical testing down the road showed that there was no problem with any of the veins in my arms. So no vein would have shut off, right? My future medical test showed no problems with any veins on my arms. Okay, and what the medical test did show is the arteries on my right arm were perfectly fine, but the arteries on the left arm had all kinds of problems. So what he did is, when you combine it with the electronic data recording evidence, he took 9.5 minutes. It all shows up right on the electronic data evidence. He took 9.5 minutes to actually jerry-rig and to position this special catheter, which is really, and what I find out later is with these catheters, you can do what is called, they actually use the word, steering. So you can actually steer the catheter. So what he had done is, and of course that's why I had a lot of pain on my left hand as well, because what he had done is he had gone on the back of my left hand, and he went intentionally to, now the veins, the veins go into the back to the heart, and the heart via the arteries disperse the blood and the contrast all throughout the body. That's how the thing works. But so if you inject the artery, it can also do the same thing. It can, if you inject the artery in the hand, it can actually also do the same thing. But you have veins all over your body, and to get to the artery, he actually had to poke the needle. He actually had to go injure the tendons in my left hand. So so he actually injected through the tendons in the left hand, and he got deep into the artery, so where he can inject the artery. So that's what he did for 9.5 minutes. He injected the artery, and then, because you can steer the needle, you can bend the needle. I never even knew this kind of things, that you can bend the needle, so the needle is not like a fixed thing. So he bent the needle. Now, even if there was something where he tried all kinds of veins and nothing worked out, he finally went for the artery. You would want to steer the injection towards along with the flow of blood, because you want it going back to the heart, right? Because really, if you hit the artery in the hand, and if you steer it with the right where the force is, where the blood is flowing, from the back of the hand, basically it goes to the fingers, and then it gets into the veins and comes back up to the heart. So even if, now not for an MRI procedure, but for like an emergency hospital care procedure, some patients in the hospital may need an injection right away, and sometimes they do it on the artery when they can't get a vein, because they have to get some medication in right away. But that's not the case for this bullshit MRI test, where in the first place I didn't even need the MRI test. The second place, I didn't even need the contrasting stuff. But in any event, the things all worked out fine, and he was just making a big lie anyway. So there is no protocol at all with the MRI process where it says that you can inject an artery. If you fail to, if you cannot inject a vein, which is impossible, you can always find a vein somewhere. So if you cannot inject the vein, you just cancel that portion of the test, right? Simple. So anyway, he spent 9.5 minutes to inject the artery, and so he can't even claim that he was trying to get some contrasting in, because he steered the needle. He steered the needle not towards downstream. He did not steer the needle downstream, so it just goes to the fingers, gets into the veins, and gets carried into the heart. No, what he did is he steered it so it goes upstream, and that's why. And he used the ulnar artery, and there are two arteries coming. Now, what happens is from the heart coming down to the fingers, the artery system at the very end, it branches off into two. So right around the elbow area, the artery system branches into two. You have the ulnar and you have the radial. Well, the radial is where you usually check the pulse, and the ulnar, usually doctors never even look at it. So he put the injury into the ulnar. So that's the incredible thing. On my right hand, my right arm, the arteries are perfectly fine. At the same time, on the left arm, all the arteries going back to the heart have injuries, except the radial artery, because he bypassed the radial, right? Because the ulnar and the radial will split. So what he did is he shot up. I think he shot up water, just plain water, and a lot of force, but it destroyed the ulnar artery. Right, and that's what it showed. So the most severe injury was on the ulnar artery. So he destroyed the ulnar artery. The radial artery obviously is entirely spared. And then when you come up where the radial and ulnar hook up, it's called the brachial artery. And the brachial artery also has injuries. Okay, and then as you come over the shoulder and into the upper chest, you got the axillary artery. And you can see actually we are going in reverse, because the arteries are supposed to be going downstream from the heart. But he did his damage going upstream, right? Because look what he's trying to do. So you have injuries on the axillary artery. Then you have injuries on the subclavian artery, which is the final artery coming very close to the heart. So you have injuries on the subclavian artery, and the subclavian artery is actually connected to the aortic arch. And just beyond the aortic arch, what connects to the heart is the ascending aorta. And then with another test, a CT scan, it shows that there's an aneurysm on the ascending aorta. Now, when we talk about something like an aneurysm of an ascending aorta, that's the more serious, harmful injury than the injuries, all throughout the artery system of the left arm. But at the same time, an aneurysm of the ascending aorta, there's at least like a minuscule chance that it could have come there by some other cause, right? So, and that's the interesting thing. The more severe the injury, the better chance that it can come from other causes as well. But this specific injury can only come by what he did. So it shows exactly what he did. And then really, once you come up to the subclavian artery and the aortic arch up in the shoulder area and the upper chest, you see what he's trying to do. He's trying to send the water and the force up into the head to flush the blood out of the brain, right? So he's trying to which he does successfully. So he flushed the blood out of the brain, because really once you come up to when you're at the upper chest and the shoulder area, at that point the arteries which go into the brain, you would not have to go up in reverse. Right, so at that point it's just a natural flow going upstream into the brain. So because the injuries came up to the subclavian and up to the aortic arch, it is 100% certainty that if it went against the force, against the normal direction pattern up to there, and he used that much force and pressure. When he got up to that point, it would have very easily carried up into the brain. Right, so that's what he did. And what it shows is, when we look at the, and then what it shows is, okay, so, and then what it also shows on the electronic evidence is that, so he made an excuse to do a second injection following the first post-contrast sequence. Then following the second post-contrast sequence, he again got me out of the tube, and he spent an additional 1.5 minutes. And this time he made some final checks, and he also attached an extension line. So then I'm back in the tube for the final sequence. So really what he did is he completed the final sequence, the full set, right? And as soon as the final sequence was completed, that's when he did the act, zap. Whatever he did through the left hand, he flushed water and force. I don't know exactly what he did, but we can see the damage going backwards in the artery system. So he used that much force, and that flushed the blood out of the brain and caused unconsciousness. And what I determined is that there is a 50-minute period that is unaccounted for. Okay, so 50 minutes are unaccounted for on the electronic data recording. Right, so because what happens is, after the test is over, it takes about 15-20 minutes to put the CD together and to put the images together. Right, so there is an additional time. So after he finishes the last post-contrast sequence and he makes me unconscious, there's supposed to be only like 15-20 minutes. Well, actually there's supposed to be only like 10 minutes before you get the next timestamp. And the next timestamp is when he adds some extra images into because what he does is, at the end of the test, see, at the beginning of the test, they have images taken, and these are called scout images. So they may have 50, 60, 100 images taken, and at the end of the test, they add those images, they select a few of those images, of the scout images. Right, so what happens is, at the end of the test, when you get off the table and walk away and go into the waiting room and wait, within 5 minutes, after 5 minutes, and at the 5 to 10 minute mark, the tech is supposed to be assembling those images. And what he does is, he puts a new time, at least in their system, they put a new timestamp on the images selected. So if the image was made at 1:05 p.m., when they select those images at 2 p.m., then they put a superimposed timestamp at 2 p.m. But in my case, the superimposed timestamps, and also what shows up in the Microsoft program, which they have like a Microsoft utilities program which gives you information from the file itself. So those event recordings all show that those things were only put together at 2:50 p.m. Right, so the test started at 1:05 p.m. and I should have been done with everything by 2 p.m. and it's only at 2:50 p.m. he's putting these things together. And so what this means is, there's the 50-minute period that is unaccounted for. Now, I did say in some places that I think I was unconscious for the full 50 minutes, and that would be a true miracle if I was unconscious for the full 50 minutes and I came on the other side, the way that I did. Okay, so, and I think probably what happened is that I was not unconscious for the full 50 minutes. But what happened is, what they used the same technique, right? So what they did is to flush the blood out of the brain, then to cause unconsciousness, and then commit the sexual assault. Okay, so they did all that, but it also involves a cover-up. So it's not just making me unconscious and committing the sex assault. They basically want to incapacitate me or to kill me. So what they do is they intentionally try to produce a stroke. Right, so if you have a stroke, and that's the incredible thing about having a stroke. If you are a 42-year-old man, you know, it is possible, because it's so over the top, something that's not going to happen during a MRI procedure. You know, it's not even the worst kind of malpractice or shortcut or whatever, is not going to produce a stroke. So they want to produce a stroke because it'll be seen as a coincidental stroke. I just happened to be there when I had the stroke. And lucky for me, the head of the facility is a neurologist, and he came right over to help me, and I did better than I would have, had I been at home or something at that time. Okay, so that would be kind of the line. So after they flushed the blood out of my head, and they got me unconscious, and they committed the sexual assault, they still weren't through. Right, so all these other minutes, what happened is, it looks like what happened is, they, one or more times, they still, with no longer any more intention of doing any more sex assault at that point, at least one or two times, because for me, it seemed like I was there a long time. Now, it felt to me that I was there for more than 50 minutes. At the same time, I am certain that it didn't feel like I was there for 1 hour and 50 minutes. Right, so I was definitely unconscious in that 50-minute period. So there was this initial unconsciousness, and the sex assault took place. And then it looks like I came to, and they again injected me, and they tried to kill me. Right. They again injected me, and they tried to cause a stroke and to kill me or to incapacitate me. When you're talking about incapacitation from a stroke, it's not just like being handicapped on a wheelchair or being paralyzed. It's like having the mind of an infant. Exactly. Right. So, we're talking about that kind of incapacitation, where you can't control your bodily functions and all that kind of stuff. Right. And what is very interesting is, I just had a recent conversation with one of them at Capital Imaging, and it is recorded, and all my recordings do in fact comply with the law in Maryland. Okay, and this person was giving out this very standard kind of answers, like a chanting, right? Like a chanting. Oh, you tell your lawyer to call call our lawyer, and you file your malpractice claim. Or, why should we even have a malpractice claim for a simple MRI test? So she's actually chanting the whole time, but she slips up in one place. When I tell her all the injuries I have, she makes the statement, "You walked out of our office." Right. So, and then she felt the need to struggle. Although she was actually running her mouth off very fast all throughout the time, and she had no pause. But when she made this statement, then she had to struggle and try to say what she meant is, did you make a report to us before you walked walked out of the office? No, you lying fucking bitch. That's not what you said. You said I walked out of the office, meaning they were trying to kill me. They were trying to cause a stroke. And somehow, miraculously, I was able to walk. When she means I walked out of the office, she literally means with my feet. She literally means I got out of the bed and actually walked out, because they had no intention of letting me walk out. They either wanted to kill me or they wanted me to put me in some nursing home or something for years where I was incapacitated, right? So they can cover up what they did, right? So she got caught on this part, and you can hear the stumble and mumble of a person who's actually chanting out the few, irrelevant lines all throughout our conversation. She just had a few set lines which she was just chanting out, and somehow she decided to answer. She put this statement in when I mentioned my specific injuries. She said, "You walked out of the office." And then she even felt the need to go back. At least she should have stayed quiet after that point. But she felt the need to go back. You can hear her coming up with the other explanation. She actually goes, did you make a report before you walked out of our office? So that's not what she meant. She tried to make it look like that's what she meant. What she meant is, I walked out of the motherfucking office, meaning I was not supposed to walk out of there. I was supposed to be dead, okay, or I was supposed to be incapacitated. That's what she meant. So that proves the point there. And so what happened is, and that's what I recall too. So I never knew that I was unconscious. But I do recall that just before I left, this guy was actually doing what's called a neuro check, which is basically he was showing me his fingers and asking me to say how many fingers I see, and also asking me to answer in complete sentences. And that's the neuro check. Why are you doing a stroke check for someone who just went for a simple MRI test? So that's what I figured out. They had two stages to it. The first stage was to cause unconsciousness and commit the sex assault. The second stage was actually to kill or incapacitate so that they can cover up the evidence. They can just call it a coincidental stroke, have me dead or have me in a nursing home somewhere and be done with it. They didn't think that someone's going to be walking out of there with all the evidence on their body. Okay, so